Welcome to NYC Now, your source for local news in and around New York City. From WNYC, it's Tuesday, October 21st. Here's the Midday News from Michael Hill.
The high cost of housing for tenants has come to dominate the New York City mayor's race, but a new report finds expenses are soaring for owners of low-income apartments as well. WNYC's David Brand reports.
The affordable housing investor Enterprise Community Partners analyzed expenses for more than 37,000 apartments receiving government funds and financing. They found average owner costs increased by 40% since 2017. But the report's authors say the solution is not to raise rents. Instead, they're calling on the city and state government to issue more rental assistance and funding for repairs and other costs. They also propose strategies to curb a sharp spike in insurance. Some landlords have recently formed a collective where members pool resources to insure themselves.
Sugar warnings are popping up on fast food menus across New York City as restaurants come into compliance with new city rules. WNYC's Caroline Lewis reports.
The warning label consists of a spoon heaped with sugar, suspended in a black pyramid. Restaurants with at least 15 locations are supposed to place the symbol next to certain menu items with more than 50 grams of added sugar, the amount recommended for an entire day. New York City is the first jurisdiction in the country to require the warnings, and public health researchers will be studying whether they help steer consumers toward healthier choices. The city health department says for now it's educating restaurants about the new rules, but will start issuing fines for violations next year.
63 and sunny now, sunny and 67 for a high today with a light wind. Showers likely overnight, low in the mid-50s. Then tomorrow, slim chance of late morning shower, sunshine in 64.
Stay close. There's more after the break.
NYC.
Jurors in Oneida County say only one of the three former guards on trial for the beating death of prisoner Robert Brooks is guilty. WNYC's Jimmy Vielkind has more on the split verdict.
Both activists and the families of the three corrections officers on trial packed a courtroom in Utica as the verdict was read Monday morning. Jurors spent more than 2 days considering murder and other charges against David Kingsley, Matthew Gallagher, and Nicholas Kiefer. Rosemary Rivera is a leader of the End Prison Violence campaign. She recalled when the jury revealed it found Kingsley guilty, but the mood quickly changed.
You hear the sigh of relief. And then the other two verdicts were read, and they were not guilty on all counts. I mean, all I felt was this heat rising.
Prosecutors charged 10 people in connection with the Brooks death last year. They played footage from body-worn cameras that showed guards punching and kicking Brooks in the infirmary of the Marcy Correctional Facility. 6 other men have already pleaded guilty to manslaughter and other charges. Special Prosecutor Bill Fitzpatrick says Kingsley and 3 other guards who already pleaded guilty were most responsible for Brooks's death.
Farina, Anzalone, Waldrop, and now Kingsley. All 4 of those people will be going to state prison for double digits.
Defense lawyers said it was unfair to lump all the guards together. Kevin Louisbrand represents Matthew Gallagher, who was found not guilty. Louisbrand says the video footage showed his client was out of the room when other officers struck Brooks.
When you look at Matthew Gallagher's conduct, he was not one of the bad guys. And he is right to be judged based upon his conduct, not a room of conduct.
Kingsley faces at least 15 years behind bars. Jimmy Vielkind, WNYC News.
New Jersey voters cast their ballots for the next governor of the state in just more than 14 days. Polls show an extremely tight race between Republican nominee Jack Ciattarelli and Democratic Representative Mikie Sherrill. To keep up with it all, we're bringing you Campaign Catch-Up, our quick weekly look at the latest. Historian Kristoffer Shields is the director of the Eagleton Center on the American Governor at Rutgers University. Chris, polling continues to show the race extremely close, with Sherrill holding a 7-point lead, depending on which poll you think of. Would you talk about how turnout is going to affect this race, given the slim margin between the two candidates?
Yeah, and I think it's probably even closer than those top line numbers in the poll suggest. So I think we're all expecting this to continue to be a volatile and unpredictable race, and really close in the end, which means that it really is all about turnout. When push comes to shove, what that turnout model looks like, whether it's like last year's or a more traditional Democratic turnout model in New Jersey, is probably going to be what ultimately makes the difference in this race. So I think as we head into this home stretch here, the turnout really is the key word, the most important word that we can use and will continue to use as we look at how this race is going to go.
Chris, why do you think it's closer than the polls show?
If you look at the top line numbers, they've all been showing they've been sort of coalescing around a 5 to 7 point lead for Mikie Sherrill. But if you get below those numbers, you see some things that are probably encouraging actually for Jack Ciattarelli. We're saying the turnout is so important. What drives turnout is voter enthusiasm, and some of those voter enthusiasm numbers we've seen in some of these polls that they're a little bit higher on the Republican side than they are on the Democratic side. So, the challenge for the pollsters always is trying to predict what the voting population is going to look like. And I think that there are some signals that it could be more Republican than they're expecting, which would be good news for Jack Ciattarelli and could bump that down to even like a 2 or 3 point race.
And what do you think is causing, from your estimation, more enthusiasm on the Republican side than the Democratic side?
I mean, that's really what the question comes down to, is where the enthusiasm is. And it's an interesting race. That the trends are interesting because, New Jersey is one of only 2 states to do the gubernatorial race the year after the presidential race. And usually that means that the party that loses the presidential is a little bit more motivated, is a little bit more engaged in the race, which this year would be the Democrats. Part of the challenge this year, though, is that Democrats, there's in the national level, at least, there's been some infighting amongst the Democratic Party itself. So there's some question as to whether that enthusiasm is there for Democrats. But I will say that, Mikie Sherrill has a strong connection with the state Democratic Party, and they have a really good sort of voter turnout machine in New Jersey. So that would be the good news for Mikie Sherrill here, is that they may well be able to sort of get their voters to the polls, which may be ultimately what this comes down to.
And Chris, what difference do you think independent voters are likely going to make here? New Jersey has a large number of independent voters.
Yeah, independent voters are really important. Unaffiliated voters are really important in New Jersey always. There are more registered Democrats than Republicans in New Jersey. That's why it's so crucial for Jack Ciattarelli to have high turnout amongst Republicans. But really, for a Republican to win the governorship in New Jersey, which does happen fairly often, we think of New Jersey as a blue state, but at the governor's level, it really is sort of back and forth between Democrats and Republicans. But generally, the successful model for a Republican in New Jersey has been, yes, solid turnout, but also winning a strong percentage, if not a majority, of the unaffiliated voters. So as we sort of come down the stretch here, we've seen the sides coalesce. Well over 90%, I think over 95% of Republicans supporting Ciattarelli, over 95% of Democrats supporting Mikie Sherrill. Those lines have sort of been drawn. So what really matters now is who can appeal to those middle voters, who can appeal to the unaffiliated voters, get them to the polls and actually get them to vote for their candidate. Because it really is, for Jack Ciattarelli to have a chance, he probably needs a pretty strong percentage of those voters. So a good defense for Mikie Sherrill would be to pick up as many independent voters as she possibly can.
And Chris, are the main attacks, are they having any impact on the electorate? For instance, Sherrill accusing Ciattarelli of spreading misinformation about opioids. Ciattarelli attacking Sherrill's time at the Naval Academy. Any of those attacks having any kind of an impact on the electorate?
It's hard to say. It's hard to quantify. I think it's not a coincidence that Mikie Sherrill has attacked Jack Ciattarelli's business and his business background, and that Jack Ciattarelli has attacked Mikie Sherrill's service background, because those are the parts of their bios that are most appealing to voters. So I think they're trying to muddy the waters a little bit on each other in terms of those backgrounds. Whether it's working or not, broadly, I don't think it'll have a huge effect. I think that voters are largely focused on some of the national issues, but especially the New Jersey issues, the affordability issues, affordable housing, utility costs, energy, the things that we've been talking, taxes, the things we've been talking about throughout the entire race. But where this could have an impact is on some of those few undecided voters that are left. So that's a place where the margins could make a difference. And then also, again, talking about turnout, just in terms of rallying their own side to get to the polls. And when we're talking about a race this close, even if it's having a small effect, that could end up being a really important effect.
Kristoffer Shields directs the Eagleton Center on the American Governor. Chris, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Anytime.
Thanks for listening. This is NYC Now from WNYC. Check us out for updates every weekday, 3 times a day for the latest news headlines and occasional deep dives. And subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back this evening.